In this story bucket are names of people who are currently in this bar who have signed up to tell stories. Are you guys ready for our very first storyteller? Last time I was so nervous it was going to be me, and this time I'm so nervous it's going to be me. Our first storyteller of the night is John Spotswood Moore. Yeah, for sure. Oh, one second. Guys, before John starts, I do have to make a quick announcement. We will be recording the stories tonight. Okay? Lethan has volunteered to record them. If you do not want your story to be recorded, please mention so at the beginning of your story so that we are able to turn off the cameras and the recording equipment and all that stuff. Everybody cool with that? Yeah, awesome. John?
Damn. Hi. Hey guys. Alright, so I was literally just thinking of what I was gonna say before I came here and praying I wasn't the first one called. Okay, this
Right to the wrong god.
that pagan god. This is the story about how the best student I've ever had called me a cunt. And so, okay, so basically, let me just start out by saying I teach age 14, 15-year-old Korean students at a Hagwon for 5 hours straight, 5 times a day. I hate every minute of it. I really hate this. No one from my Hagwon sees this. But it has nothing to do with my actual Hagwon. It has nothing to do with Korea in general. I just don't enjoy teaching that age group. It was a shitty decision for me to come here in the first place to do that. I have a master's degree. I could probably teach university, but for some reason I chose to do that. So I remember I was in my class, not having a particularly good day, to which I'll get to in a little bit, and the kids, 8th, 9th grade, carrying on their conversation, XO, League of Legends, Xbox, X-Men, XXO, League of Legends, X-Men, blah, 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 blah. And I'm dragging through the day, and I have a student, and her name is Subin. And I remember these names using mnemonic devices. I like to think of a name that befits them that's American. And most of the time, if I say it in a really Korean accent, it sounds like their Korean name. This one, I remind me of the name Susie, because she looked like a little Susie every day in class with her books and her big, thick glasses, super polite, smiling. She had a quality that not a lot of the other kids had. And I was in class, they were going about their conversation, and her hand shoots up. I go over and she goes, "Teacher, teacher." "Yes?" "You're a cunt." And I just paused there for a second, and I was just like, what? Let's just rewind here a little bit. And I'm gonna come back to that. I'm gonna bookmark with that. I remember my 3rd week in Daegu. I went to see Doug's band, Curses.
Yeah!
And I was there seeing my buddy who's a drummer, and I remember when I was watching him, when I was watching Doug sing, and he was all up front. If you've ever seen him perform before, he looks like a fucking cartoon. Like, he just like all in your face, and I was right here, so he kind of looked, it was kind of like I had a camera with like a fisheye lens. He was just popping in, and his curly mustache was out, and his t-shirt was really bright. And so something looked very odd, more odd, about Doug when I was watching him. I don't know what it was, but it just, something about him looked very, very fuzzy. It had nothing to do with him. And so I closed this eye right here, and he was in my face, the depressing medicine cabinet, and like with his hair and with his face and everything. And then I closed this eye, and he was smaller somehow. And the coloration on his face and on his shirt was desaturated. And there was this little blur. It was like a sunspot. It's like if you look at the light for a second, close your eyes, you have this flicker. But it was there, and there was nothing I could do about it. And it was like, it felt like it was like the size of, I don't know, just like a speck. And this really kind of bothered me, so I grabbed my friend and I said, I think there's something wrong with my eye. He goes, oh, well, there's a pollution problem in this country. You probably have allergies. You probably have something fogging up your lens. So why don't you go home and get some drops or even just splash some water? It happened to me. So I went home, I did that, didn't work. In fact, it was getting even worse. So I made an appointment to see an English-speaking eye doctor. You know what this means if you've ever been to see any English-speaking doctor. And it's so surreal going to see an eye doctor. It's weird going to get eye tests in America, but I mean, coming here because you sit down and they're like, oh, please sit. You sit in front of a machine and you're like, what is this thing? Oh, you closed your eye, open it again. When I sat down to read the chart, close your left eye, what is that? BGZH1T. Close your right eye, what is that? I don't know. I can't see it. I can't see out of my left eye. It's that sunspot was now encompassing everything I saw. There was no color either. It was sepia toned in my left eye. And she said, okay, close your left eye, what do you see? And again, I could read it perfectly, close your right eye, what do you see? And I couldn't see a single fucking thing. And the doctor, who just thought it was adorable that I couldn't speak Korean, was sitting there the entire time, and he basically said to me, oh, you have an astigmatism, your prescription has changed. And if that was the case, my glasses would be like 20/80 in this eye, and like 25,000 in this eye, and I'd look like a Bond villain with like one lens that's like out to here, and one that's... And it was starting to become really scary, and then one morning I woke up, and I literally couldn't see anything out of my left eye. I couldn't see anything. I could see little wisps, but it was like I was looking through a Coke bottle or a funhouse mirror. Everything was completely distorted. So I called my dad, who was a doctor and who was in the military, and we managed to find a proper eye specialist. And we actually managed to find a professor that we were friends with, a friend of a friend of a friend, to go there with me and translate. And again, sit down, eye test, what's this? Just the entire thing all over again. And he sat down with me, and his words filtered through this lady. He showed me a picture of an eyeball, which was my eyeball. But it was something very, very weird. When he actually zoomed into it, there was the eye, and then on the outside of the eye, there was a ring around it. And underneath this outermost layer, there was something that looked like a ball, like a deflated, like, I don't know what it was. It looked like kind of like a teardrop. And it was pushing this outer layer of my eye up. And that outer layer was breaking. It was ripped. And he said to me, your retina is detaching. You have a growth, a pocket of fluid underneath the outermost layer of your eye, right under your retina. And this is going to keep on growing. And the more it grows, the more it's going to detach your retina until you can't see it all out of it. Side note, I just spent the last 4.5 years getting a master's in filmmaking. Just little, I'm an animator by trade, so I need to see what 3D looks like. Like, I can't, and this really, really scared me. And so he said, this is amazing, I've never seen this in somebody your age. This happens a lot in Korea, but always happens to people in their 50s and 60s. The main thing is you can't be stressed out. You cannot be stressed out. And I wanted to shake him and be like, you're fucking 14 and 15-year-old Korean middle schoolers. What? My citizenship depends on me being stressed out. And so I went home and started taking medication 3 times a day. I actually forgot to take it today, I just remembered. And the thing is, my whole, sorry, I lost my place. The whole thing was, I called up my mom that day, and I remember talking to her and saying, I'm out. I'm out. I'm out of this fucking country. I'm out of this job. I don't want to risk losing my sight. I hate fucking teaching kids. I'm overqualified for this. I don't like doing it. I'm out. I'm miserable here. I'm gonna go back home. And she's like, well, what are you gonna do? And I'm like, well, I'm gonna go back to my old job. And she's like, you wanna do that? And I said, yes. And she goes, John, you've never been satisfied with anything. And the more I started to look back, the more she was right. I was a military brat. I would live this place for 2 years. I would live this place for 2 years. I lived this place for 4 years. But I got into my head a mentality of moving on and on. When I was in high school, from the moment I got there was nothing I wanted more than to go to college. When I was in college, there was nothing I wanted more than to study abroad. When I went to study abroad, there was nothing I wanted more than to come home. You know, and so on, graduating college, so on for work, so on for grad school, so on for coming to Korea. There was nothing I wanted more than to leave the US, because even though I had a good job, I don't know what it's like to actually be satisfied. And there are lots of scary things that you can think about. It's really, really scary when you graduate from high school and you have to decide what you're doing with your life and you have to think of a college to go to. It's really scary when you end up getting a really shitty liberal arts degree and you end up working a minimum wage job with people that never finished high school. It's really shitty when you get in debt to get a master's in animation and then you go on YouTube and see some 17-year-old kid in Japan who can do what you do a zillion times better. But there is nothing scarier than hearing somebody who's known you your entire life say, you have never been satisfied. You have never been happy. And I remember going home that night, and I remember going online, and I remember seeing all of the jobs I could get in Austin. And I remember seeing Flash Animator, and I was qualified and I could get the job, but all I could think was, I'm gonna do this for 3 months and then I'm just gonna wanna leave. I started to look at jobs, you know, you could be a graphic designer, you're trained for that, you'll get hired for this, but in 3 months you're gonna wanna leave. And then I went on Facebook and I remember seeing like some kid that I knew in high school who looked like he'd been hit in the face with a fucking bag of hot coals, but he's like, who never finished high school, but he's getting married, as is everyone on Facebook, and he's saying, oh, this is the greatest moment of my life, I'm so happy. Or I see somebody who has a shitty job as an accountant, and they say, oh my God, I'm so happy, I'm so satisfied. And it's just coming to you from every angle, and I went in to see my boss, and she, right when I came in, she gave me a hug and said, how are you? How are you doing? How am I doing on time, by the way?
You're all right, you got 4 minutes.
Okay, I'll wrap it up. So basically, I went to see her, everything was cool, everything was cordial, and I got the way out I wanted. I wouldn't be blacklisted, I wouldn't have anything happen to me that was bad, I could go back to the States and continue to run like I had been doing my entire life. So the next day, I was in class, XOXO, League of Legends, X-Men, Xbox, blah, 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 blah. Teacher, yes, you're a cunt. And I just paused, and that day, man, I mean, I was so down. If I could have smoked in class, I would have just been standing there like this, like with a cigarette hanging from my mouth, like I was so out of it. And I said, what did you just say? And she goes, you're a cunt? And I took my hand and whack, just slapped it on the desk. I didn't hit her. Slapped it on the desk as hard as I could. And everyone in the class got silent. That special silence where everyone knows that somebody's getting in trouble. And I looked at her and she was trembling. This amazing student who wanted nothing more than to succeed. And I just, something inside me, all I could think was the power and the strength and how much this country asks of them to go to school for 13 hours a day, to be good, or else they're gonna have the worst life in the world. I just kind of realized, these are fucking kids. They're kids and they're doing something I could never do. And so I went up to her and I said, what did you say? And she pointed to the air conditioner and goes, air con. Not you're a cunt, air con. And so, and I do it on the guitar. No, but the thing was though, for that moment, I remember that realization that they are kids. And for just a second, and for just a moment, I actually enjoyed being a teacher. I actually enjoyed going around in that class and teaching these kids and actually having fun with them. And the next class I would hate it, the class after that I would hate it. But my point is, I could wash out of any country. You know, I could go to Turkey and do this, I could go to Japan and do this, I could go to England and do this, it doesn't matter. But I'm so glad I came here, because when I see how hard these kids work, and when I see how they persevere in a society that has so much of them, it makes me want to work that hard to try and be happy. And I do it all again.
Yeah!